On Christmas Eve, the old Talbot estate carried an air of solemn anticipation. Snow drifted down in soft sheets outside, catching the glow of lanterns along the driveway, while inside the house the warmth of the fire could not hide the sharp chill of expectation that clung to every person seated around the mahogany table. The walls were lined with portraits of our ancestors, their painted eyes seeming to watch us with judgment, as though eager to see who would walk away with the lion's share of Grandpa's fortune. I sat in my chair, back straight, heart steady, though I could feel every gaze glance toward me, measuring, waiting. When the lawyer cleared his throat and began reading the will, I felt the tension coil tighter, like a string about to snap. Names rolled off his lips: Uncle Frank, Aunt May, Cousin Lila, my brother Stephen, my sister Nora, each rewarded with a slice of real estate, a trust fund, or a generous investment account. Smiles spread. Whispers of satisfaction floated across the table. Then came my turn. "Donald," the lawyer said, his voice careful, his expression unreadable, "you get none of it." The words landed like a hammer on stone. Gasps echoed faintly, but louder still were the smirks that curved across familiar faces. Their satisfaction was poisonous, their joy in my supposed downfall almost enough to push me out of the room. Almost, but not quite, for I knew something they didn't. And more importantly, Grandpa had always known more than he ever let on. As the smirks deepened, the lawyer raised one hand and paused, deliberately stretching the silence until it cracked in the air like frost. "However," he said, "per the instructions of the deceased, there is a codicil to this will. It is to be read only after the primary inheritance has been distributed, and only if the atmosphere in the room revealed what Mr. Talbot anticipated it would." The laughter died instantly. Unease replaced smugness, and I leaned back in my chair, eyes steady, while the lawyer pulled out a sealed envelope from his leather folio. The rustle of paper was louder than any voice in that room. "Your grandfather wished to test the measure of this family," the lawyer said, sliding a black card onto the table. "And he left instructions that this would explain the true nature of his estate." The envelope tore open, and with it, every hidden confidence began to bleed into the open. The lawyer read the codicil slowly, carefully, each word carving into the table's polished surface as if written there with fire. Before we continue, be part of our growing family by hitting that subscribe button. And here's something fun. Share your name and tell us where you're tuning in from in the comments. We might feature you with a shout out in our next video, because your support truly means the world to us. Now, let's proceed. My estate as written in the will distributes wealth, not power. Wealth can make fools feel like kings, but the true backbone of this family lies in the Lighthouse Trust. Donald receives nothing under the will because he is instead designated as the sole trustee of the lighthouse. He will hold full veto power, full discretion over distributions, and ownership of the controlling shares that anchor this family's business and properties. Everything flows through him. Should anyone doubt this, the documents and deeds are enclosed herewith. My name hung in the room like thunder after lightning. Aunt May's hand froze over her pearls. Uncle Frank went pale, though his jaw tightened like a vice. Cousin Lila's smirk faltered, replaced by a twitch of disbelief. Nora looked down at her lap, as though hoping her silence would save her. Stephen tried to speak, but no sound came out. The lawyer calmly placed the matte black card in front of me. It was small, unassuming, but I could feel every eye staring at it as though it were a crown. There was also a letter, folded neatly, addressed in Grandpa's precise handwriting, for Donald. I opened it, hands steady though my chest hammered. "Don," it began, "if you're reading this, it means the family has shown their true faces at the mention of your exclusion." I told the lawyer to watch carefully and wait for their expressions before revealing the truth. Cruelty exposes itself quickly when people believe the weakest are stripped of their place. You were not excluded, you were entrusted. I gave them wealth to reveal their character, but I gave you stewardship, Because you are the only one who ever understood that responsibility is heavier than inheritance. Remember, Don, punishments burn, but guidance reshapes. Choose wisely, and let the lighthouse guide this family from the rocks. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into my pocket. The paper burned like a brand against my chest. For the first time that evening, it was their faces that looked small, not mine. Aunt May found her voice first, brittle as glass. "This must be some mistake," she said, forcing out a bitter laugh. "Donald has never been capable of leadership. He barely scraped by on his own, living in that shabby garage apartment all these years. Grandpa wouldn't leave the core of the estate to him." The lawyer smiled faintly, his patience honed by decades of greed and denial. "He did exactly that, Miss Talbot. And I can assure you, the documents are airtight." Uncle Frank leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, his hands clasped as though ready to make a bargain or a threat. "So," he said slowly, "the future of our assets, our businesses, our properties, lies with you, Donald? You of all people." He spat the words like bitter wine. I met his gaze and didn't flinch. "Yes," I said simply. "And Grandpa was right. You were always eager to consume, but never to contribute. That ends now." The silence that followed was heavier than any storm. The lawyer opened another folder with colored tabs sticking out like silent verdicts. "Your grandfather also instructed me to disclose the outstanding loans some of you owe him. These are not gifts. They are debts secured by liens on your properties, all of which are now under the Lighthouse Trust." He flipped the first page. Uncle Frank, the ranch, mortgaged. Nora, the boutique loan, unpaid. Aunt May, the townhouse renovations, secured against trust funds. Lila, your lifestyle debts, tied to your Manhattan property. Each name hit like a gavel. Panic rose like steam in the room. Their smirks were gone, replaced by wide eyes, trembling lips, and suppressed rage. Lila slammed her hand on the table. "You can't enforce this," she cried. The lawyer didn't even look up. "The trustee can and will. You may contest, but the liens are binding." Slowly, every eye turned toward me. For the first time in my life, they looked at me not as the forgotten one, but as the man holding the beam of the lighthouse. I leaned forward, folding my hands on the table, my voice steady. "I will not strip you bare," I said, "but I will not allow you to leech anymore. Uncle Frank, the ranch stays yours, but the north pasture will be leased to the local co-op for the kids. You'll run workshops with them, free of charge. Nora, your boutique will survive, but half your profits will support the community kitchen and scholarship fund. Aunt May, your townhouse will remain, but you'll dedicate part of your trust to medical clinics Grandpa was funding. And Lila," I paused, letting her stew in her fury, "you can either take a financial literacy course and restructure your debts under my oversight, or the townhouse is repossessed and sold. The choice is yours." Their silence wasn't agreement, but it was submission. For once, they understood that the game they'd been playing for years had new rules, and I was the referee. The lawyer stood, closing his folder. "As trustee, Donald may call the first Lighthouse board meeting. Mr. Talbot suggested January 10th. You will all be expected to attend." He handed me the folder and nodded. "Your grandfather chose wisely." As the room emptied, I could see the storm in their eyes. Some would fight, some would beg, some might even try to manipulate me. But Grandpa's letter burned in my pocket, reminding me that my role wasn't vengeance. It was stewardship, and stewardship, though lonely, had a kind of power they could never understand. As the last of them left, I walked to the window. Outside, the snow had stopped, and the moonlight lit the drifts in silver. I placed the black card in my wallet, feeling the weight of it settle. It was more than a card, it was a key not just to the family fortune, but to the chance of reshaping a legacy that greed had nearly destroyed. Weeks later, the changes began to show. Uncle Frank, stripped of his reckless indulgence, stood among teenagers teaching them to saddle horses, his pride reshaped into service. Nora's boutique began hosting classes where single mothers learned to sew for extra income. Aunt May funded a clinic where her name was quietly displayed, and though she resented it at first, she began to see gratitude in the eyes of people she'd once ignored. Even Lila, after her tantrums burned out, grudgingly attended bookkeeping courses and found herself learning humility one painful lesson at a time. The Lighthouse Trust wasn't just saving the family's assets, it was reforming their souls. And in every decision I made, I could hear Grandpa's voice. The lighthouse doesn't shine for itself. It shines so others won't crash. When March came, the new wing of the community shelter opened. I stood at the back, watching as volunteers cut the ribbon, their names etched into the plaque instead of ours. My family stood nearby, some humbled, some still bristling, but all present. For the first time, the Talbots were contributing to something greater than themselves. I touched the letter in my pocket, its edges worn from rereading, and whispered quietly to the memory of the man who entrusted me with everything. I won't let the light go out, Grandpa. That night, walking away from the shelter, I looked back and saw the glow of the building against the dark horizon. It wasn't a lighthouse on the sea, but in that moment, it felt just as strong. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Your support means the world to us.